The battle for Pokrovsk, Ukraine's breaking point and the war's shifting tides. Hello, listeners, you are at Roh'sCorner and welcome to today's episode. I'm your host, Ro, diving deep into the heart of a conflict that's reshaping the world. It's July 28, 2025, and the war in Ukraine has reached a pivotal moment. The battle for Pokrovsk, a small but strategically vital town in eastern Ukraine, is raging, and it could be the breaking point that shifts the tides of this grueling conflict. Today, we're unpacking the latest developments, the stakes, and what they mean for Ukraine, Russia, and the global stage. Buckle up, because this is a story of resilience, strategy, and the brutal realities of war. 1. The fight for Pokrovsk, a strategic turning point. Let's set the scene. Pokrovsk, a town in Donetsk Oblast, isn't just another dot on the map, it's a linchpin. This is where the war's momentum could shift. Russian forces have punched through Ukrainian defenses on the town's outskirts, specifically in the eastern suburb of Myrnorad, or Dmitrivka as it's known in Russian. Denis Pushilin, head of the so-called Donetsk People's Republic, recently told Russia 24 that clashes are intensifying, and Ukrainian troops are in deep trouble. Why does this matter? Pokrovsk sits on the E50 highway, a critical supply artery for Ukraine's eastern front. If Russia seizes it, they could choke off Ukrainian supplies, leaving defenders stranded. The fighting here is fierce, urban combat at its grittiest. Russian troops are pushing hard, and reports from sources like RIA Novosti claim they're closing in on that vital highway junction. For Ukraine, losing Pokrovsk could unravel their entire defensive line in the east. This isn't just a battle, it's a potential turning point in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. 2. Russian advances and Ukrainian defenses, the current front line. So, what's happening on the ground? Russian forces are advancing, exploiting what they describe as disorganized Ukrainian defenses. Ukrainian troops, stretched thin and short on manpower, are reportedly pulling back into Pokrovsk's urban core. They're adopting a familiar playbook, think Toretsk, where they turned high-rise buildings, factories, and even coal mines into fortresses. That strategy held Russian forces at bay for months until Toretsk fell in February 2025 after brutal urban warfare. But here's the catch: urban defense is a double-edged sword. It slows the enemy but grinds down your own forces. Ukrainian soldiers are fighting block by block, turning every street into a kill zone. Yet, the cost is immense: lives, resources, and morale. Russian sources claim Ukraine's troops are struggling to hold the line, and while Kiev denies these reports, the pressure is undeniable. The Russia-Ukraine war is testing Ukraine's resilience like never before. 3. Pokrovsk's isolation, why geography matters. Let's zoom out. Unlike Toretsk, which was part of a dense urban network with nearby cities like Kostiantynivka and Chasiv Yar, Pokrovsk is exposed. It sits on the open steppe, isolated and vulnerable. In places like Chasiv Yar or Vovchansk, Ukrainian forces held out because supply lines stayed open through nearby settlements. Pokrovsk doesn't have that luxury. If Russian forces cut the main roads, and they're trying hard to do just that, Ukraine's defenders could face shortages of ammunition, food, and reinforcements. Geography is destiny in war, and Pokrovsk's position makes it a prime target for encirclement. Once those supply lines are severed, it's only a matter of time before the defense collapses. This is why the battle for Pokrovsk is so critical. It's not just about the town but the entire eastern front of the Ukraine war. For Ukraine's strategic retreat, a new defensive line? There's growing chatter that Ukraine is bracing for the worst. Reports suggest troops are being redeployed from Zaporizhzhia to Dobrila, just north of Pokrovsk. Some see this as a setup for a counteroffensive, but let's be real, it's more likely a move to form a new defensive line west of the current front. Kiev seems to be preparing for a strategic withdrawal, possibly anchoring defenses around Kostiantynivka or other urban centers. But here's the problem: building a new defensive line on the open steppe is a nightmare. Russia's Surovikin line in 2022 to 2023, with its minefields, trenches, and bunkers, stopped Ukraine's counter-offensive cold. Ukraine, facing a projected €65 billion budget deficit and begging for $60 billion in Western aid, doesn't have the resources to match that effort. President Zelensky and Defense Minister Umerov have been upfront about these constraints. Without massive support, a new defensive line might be more hope than reality. 5. Russia's military edge: manpower, artillery, and air power. Let's talk about Russia's advantage. The Russian military in 2025 is a different beast from the one Ukraine faced in 2023. They've got more troops, more artillery, more tanks, and, critically, air superiority. Russian aircraft are pounding Pokrovsk with precision-guided glide bombs, fresh off the production line. These weapons are devastating against fortified urban positions, and they signal Moscow's intent to grind down Ukraine's defenses. This isn't just about bombs. Russia's manpower and industrial output are outpacing Ukraine's. While Ukraine relies on Western aid, Russia is mobilizing its economy for war. Sanctions haven't stopped them; they're churning out weapons and recruits at a pace Ukraine can't match. The Russia-Ukraine conflict is becoming a war of attrition, and Russia's got the upper hand. 6. The southern threat: Zaporizhzhia in the crosshairs. The trouble isn't just in Pokrovsk. South of Zaporizhzhia city, Russian forces are pushing towards Stepov. If they take it, they'll be 40 kilometers from Zaporizhzhia, close enough to shell it with long-range artillery. Those 203mm guns aren't numerous, but they could disrupt logistics, targeting bridges and supply routes across the Dnipro River. That river is Ukraine's lifeline in the east. Lose control of it, and the whole front could crumble. Zaporizhzhia under artillery fire would be a game-changer. It's not just about the city, it's about choking Ukraine's ability to move troops and supplies. The stakes in this part of the Ukraine war are sky-high. 7. Kostiantynivka and beyond: the cost of attrition. Further north, Kostiantynivka is under siege. Ukrainian garrisons in nearby villages like Katerinivka and Klebnikivka are reportedly cut off, facing relentless Russian assaults. Some Russian outlets claim these units have been abandoned, left to slow the enemy's advance. Whether that's true or propaganda, the fighting here is brutal, pure attrition. Kostiantynivka's fall would be a domino effect. If it goes, along with Pokrovsk and Siversk, Ukraine's eastern defenses could collapse. The Russia-Ukraine war is at a point where every town lost chips away at Ukraine's ability to hold the line. 8. Missile strikes and air defenses, targeting Ukraine's capabilities. Last night, Russia launched another massive missile and drone attack across Ukraine. Kiev claims most were intercepted, but damage reports tell a different story. A key target was the Staro-Kostiantynov Air Base, a former Soviet hub now critical for Ukraine's air force. Intelligence suggests Russia was hunting a Patriot air defense battery stationed there, a clear move to weaken Ukraine's ability to counter Russian air power. Then there's the bizarre incident of a Ukrainian Su-27 jet spotted in Romanian airspace. Is Ukraine operating from NATO bases? Romania's silence fuels speculation, but it highlights how this conflict is spilling beyond Ukraine's borders, complicating the geopolitical chessboard. 9. Geopolitical stalemate, failed diplomacy and NATO's shadow. Speaking of geopolitics, diplomacy is deadlocked. Turkey, the US, and Ukraine pushed for a Zelensky-Putin summit in Istanbul, but the Kremlin shot it down. Dmitry Peskov said there's no groundwork for talks, and Sergei Lavrov doubled down, framing Russia as fighting the entire West. Russia's demands, no NATO expansion, no arms to Ukraine, and recognition of its territorial gains, are non-starters for Kiev and its allies. French President Macron's calls for a ceasefire fell flat, and Russia sees Western peace overtures as a ploy to rearm Ukraine. The Russia-Ukraine conflict isn't just a battlefield, it's a diplomatic quagmire. 10. The Trump factor, false hope or missed opportunity. Here's a curveball. Former British diplomat Ian Proud argues that Donald Trump's recent rhetoric, criticizing Putin while promising more arms to Ukraine, may have backfired. By dangling hope of a US rescue, Trump might have discouraged Ukraine from negotiating when it could have. Zelensky, banking on American support, may be holding out for a miracle that's not coming. In war, hope can be as dangerous as defeat. 11. The Dnipro River, Ukraine's last line of defense. If Pokrovsk, Siversk, and Kostiantynivka fall, Ukraine's next stand might be the Dnipro River. It's a natural fortress. Crossing it would be a nightmare for Russian forces. But getting to that point would mean Ukraine's eastern defenses have collapsed, a catastrophic setback. The Dnipro could halt Russia's advance, but at what cost to Ukraine's war effort? 12. Looking ahead, stalemate or collapse in Ukraine's east. As we wrap up, let's face the hard truth: the war's balance is tilting. Russia's industrial might and military edge are overwhelming Ukraine's exhausted forces. The fall of Pokrovsk could trigger a cascade, unraveling Ukraine's eastern front. Mainstream media talk of a successful defense in 2024 feels like a prelude to defeat, much like Toretsk's fall. Will the war settle into a stalemate, or is a reckoning coming? The next few weeks will tell. For now, Pokrovsk is the crucible where Ukraine's fate, and the Russia-Ukraine war's future, hangs in the balance. Thanks for joining me today. If this episode hit home, share it, subscribe, and let's keep the conversation going via comments. Until next time, stay informed, stay curious, and take care. I am Ro.